Heralders, welcome back to my channel, and it's time for one of my favorite videos of the year. It is my favorite books of the year. Just a small, slight, mini disclaimer, I will not be doing my least favorite books of the year this year. I have talked about this in a couple of videos, probably by the time you're seeing this, but I did not do well with my reading goal in 2019. My goal was to read 19 books, and when I'm filming this, I read 17. I might be able to finish an 18th book before December 31st, but it's not looking like it. I don't feel like I read enough books to do least favorite books of the year. Instead, I'm just going to focus on the 8 books that I gave 4 stars or better on Goodreads, and there's only 7 books here because I don't have a copy of one of them. But yeah, these books are kind of in an order. So I track my books by, like, I put them on an Excel sheet and I kind of order them as I go. So maybe if I read like books back to back, they wouldn't necessarily be in this order, but they're kind of in an order. And yeah, let's just get started with it. I have my notes on my phone as per usual. Look at my little cousin. So if I'm looking at my phone, that's why, because I'm not always good at remembering to look back at you guys. My 8th favorite book, I guess you would say, was Maybe This Time by Kasie West. I did win this in a Goodreads giveaway, so it is a proof. And I actually have a whole book talk, book review of it on my channel. So this is going to be the book that I'm going to kind of skim over the most. But it follows Sophie, who is an aspiring fashion designer, but works at a florist in her small Alabama town. And she meets Andrew Hart, which is like the son of this world's Emerald. And he kind of goes and like helps catering companies become good again. I don't know. I don't completely understand. I mean, I do understand it, but I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. I really got distracted by where I'm going to put this book when I'm done talking about it. So yeah, I have a whole book talk about it, so you guys can go see my full and thorough thoughts about this book. But Maybe This Time by Kasie West came in 8th. 7th book on my list is Following by Jeffrey Johnston. This book follows Alden, who likes to follow people, but not in a creepy from Joe, from you kind of way. More in a, I want to be a private detective when I grow up. And he witnesses a crime, but when the crime goes to get investigated, there's no evidence that a crime took place. And it takes place in probably like a 48-hour, I want to say, period, maybe a little bit more. It's like a little bit more than a weekend, but like not a full week. And I really enjoyed, one, the reason that Alden kind of follows people. I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of go about this story, because it's prevalent, but it's not. And I just really liked it. I also really liked that I had multiple guesses about what happened with the crime, and each time I would get a little closer, I'd be like, oh wait, that's not it. And then I finally did get it. The one thing I will say about it is I liked the twist ending, but I feel like he could have done more with the twist ending and kind of made it more full circle than it ended up being. I can't talk about it without giving it away. So if you've read Following, or you're not going to read it but you want to know what the twist ending was, you can always DM me and I'll talk to you about it. But I don't know, I really liked it. It was fast, it was an easy read. It is a YA thriller, so if you're more into adult thrillers, I wouldn't read it, because YA thrillers normally, like, I think that's why I didn't get the full circle ending that I would have loved, but it was good. Number 6 was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This follows Andy, who has her whole like summer kind of planned out, but when something happens with her dad, her summer plans do like a 360. And it's not, what I really appreciated about this book was that, yeah, she moped for a little while, but a lot of what I read felt really realistic. Like, it honestly felt like reading a summer from Andy's life. It wasn't like a hard timeline to follow. I honestly could believe that everything that happened in these pages happened in a 3-month summer. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed a lot of pieces. I feel like I related really well to Andy as well. She kind of has this moment where like she doesn't want to commit. I feel like she has some commitment issues, and I related to that. And Sometimes this video is hard to film because you can't talk about it without giving spoilers. I don't know. I really liked it. I really related to Andy. It's Morgan Matson. I rarely don't like something that Morgan Matson puts out. I feel like a book by Morgan Matson has probably been on my book or my list every year that I've done this. I just really, really enjoyed this. Let me see if there's more in my notes so I can stop saying I really, really enjoyed this. Number 5, I don't have a copy of anymore. I lent it to a friend and it never came back to me, but it was 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. This book, if you don't know, because I don't know, you were living under a rock when the movie came out, is about 2 teens with cystic fibrosis. I think that's how you say it. I'm doubting myself though. But basically, if you have that disease, you can't be within 5 feet of someone else who has that disease, and you can't make any physical contact with someone who has that disease because the germs that they carry can like make each other very sick very quickly. And I really enjoyed this book. I don't know, I mean, I don't have it, so I don't know if it is an accurate portrayal of what it's like to have this disease. Haley from Haley in Bookland talked a little bit about it in her 2019 adaptation, and she said that she heard that they worked a lot with kids who had it to really make sure the representation was done well, so I'm assuming that it was done well, but I don't know for sure, as I kind of mentioned. I actually didn't expect to like this book. When I picked it, when I saw the promo for it, I was like, oh my god, this book is just gonna be like The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, which I'm not a huge fan of. Sorry if you are. That's one of my least favorite books probably of all time. But I actually liked it a lot more. I thought it was a lot better than that. The characters didn't feel as precocious as the characters in The Fault in Our Stars did. Although Cole Sprouse is the one in the movie, right? Yeah. Cole Sprouse probably could have played Augustus, whatever his last name is, Gus, in The Fault in Our Stars. I think he probably could have played that well because he is kind of a precocious dude. But I didn't like that one as much, and this one I loved. I also did not expect to cry, and there was a scene that I like sat in my bed and I like sobbed. I was so upset about it, and when I lent it to my friend, I was like, you need to read it so then we can talk about the part that made me sob. Also, I will be honest, I liked the ending in the book a lot better than the ending of the movie. I did see though, if you're like me and you liked it, I did see that they did an alternative ending, and it's on YouTube, and I'll link it down below. That is a lot closer matching up to what it was in the book. It's more similar to the book, and I wish that had been the real ending because, yeah, the ending was sweet and all that, but I really enjoyed the ending of the book a lot more. I feel like it gave you better closure. Number 4 was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Malasquallo. I think that's how you say her last name. I don't know. This book had been on my TBR forever. If you go back and watch my first ever like books I want to read, and I want to say it was 2017, maybe 2018, I can't remember. I actually did talk about this book. I had bought it and I really wanted to read it, and it took me till now to read it. This book though is about, I want to say her name is Audrey. It might be Aubrey. I always get those names mixed up. I really think it's Audrey. I'm just gonna go with Audrey. It follows Audrey Rose, who lives in the era of Jack the Ripper, which is like the 1800s, I think. And she works in her father or her uncle's medical examining office, and they're examining the victims of Jack the Ripper. And I loved this book. I thought it was so good. There's some really nice feminist tie-ins to the book without being like overly feministic. I don't know, that's not a word. And I really enjoyed that part of this book. The other thing I really liked about this book was that I had an idea of who Jack the Ripper was through the whole novel, but it wasn't super obvious. I actually was going between 2 people for most of the novel. And I liked that it felt very rooted in history, but if you don't know anything about Jack the Ripper, I think it would still make sense. And you actually can learn a little bit about him in the end. There's like a, almost like a letter from the author where she talks about like what she changed and like what artistic liberties she took with it, and I really enjoyed it. This was actually the second book I read this year, and for a long time was in that #1 slot. It really started the year off great. I don't know where that reading slump in the middle of the year came from when this was one of the first books I read this year. So good. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. I am listening to Hunting Prince Dracula currently, but I'm not enjoying it as much. But from what I've heard, the second book is a lot of people's least favorite of the 4, so I'm going to chug through it and possibly read the third one. Book number 3. A book from the series has been on my favorite books of the year list every year since I've been making these videos. I love this series, and I know a lot of people will probably look at it as like a guilty pleasure series, but I just love it. And it is The Score, which is the 3rd book in the Off-Campus series. This one follows Dean, who is the ultimate boy, and he starts having this thing with this girl named Allie, and yeah. I don't know, I always love these books. I just love the chemistry between the characters, and like, they're not always the most... Sometimes they're problematic. Sometimes the characters are problematic, and I don't talk a lot about these kind of books on my channel. I work with kids, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but they are sometimes problematic, but I do still kind of like them. Maybe they are more guilty pleasure, but it ended up being number 3. That's how much I enjoyed this book. Number 2 was By Your Side by Casey West. This book follows Autumn and Dax. They get locked in a library over Memorial Day weekend, and some other stuff happens. And I just really liked this book. I think Casey West did a really good job of representation of some different mental health. There was some anxiety, there was some like abandonment, commitment issues, and all of that. But my favorite part was the relationship between Autumn and Dax. I loved them. I wanted them together. They actually, in my reading survey, they became my OTP of the year. But something I really enjoyed was the maturity of the love triangle in this story. So one trope that I kind of really like is when in the beginning of a novel, the main character, whether it's the guy or the girl, already has feelings for someone else. They have a crush on somebody else, and then they meet the person that becomes the romantic interest in the book, and they really still have to juggle kind of their feelings towards the other person. And I feel like it was unrealistic because it took place in high school, and I know that when I was in high school, I would not have handled this as maturely as these characters did, but I don't know. I really loved the love triangle in this. I loved that it wasn't like, it wasn't caveman-esque. It wasn't like, I'm gonna punch this guy. It was just handled with some maturity that I don't even think some people my age could handle. And I just, oh my god, I loved this story. 10 out of 10, would recommend. And it almost was my favorite book of the year, but I just felt like my favorite book of the year needed to be my favorite book of the year, so that's how this book got second. And I also rarely do this, but I read it in 2 sittings. I rarely, like even books this small, I rarely read in 2 sittings. I read typically for 45 minutes to an hour before I go to bed, and I stayed up till almost 2 in the morning, which is very unlike me to finish this book. And then, my favorite book of the year. I'm behind the times with this book, and I know that, and I should have read it like 2 years ago, but I didn't. But it is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This book is about Star, who is pulled over with her friend, both of them being people of color, and her friend is shot during the pullover by the officer. And it is heartbreaking and eye-opening and just so emotional. But that's not the only part of it. Like, the characters, I loved the dynamic of her family, and I loved the kind of conflict between her parents with her mom, whose brother lives in like a more affluent, a better off area of the city, but the dad wants to stay in, I forget what it's called. Where does she live? The Heights? Stay in the neighborhood they lived in, which is where this incident happens and where they grew up, and he wants to keep raising his kids there even though his kids go to a private school. This book was good. There are very few complaints that I had about it. I don't like the way the court case ended, but I think it's realistic. I don't know. It was just so good. I haven't gotten to see the movie yet. It's not, it's nowhere for, like, it's on none of the streaming services that I have for free. I can get it on Amazon, but I have to pay for it, and your girl just didn't have money at that time to pay for a movie that I might not watch multiple times. And I don't think I can rent it. I think I have to buy it on Amazon. But it was really, really good. If you haven't read it, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. So many people, I think, can be touched by this book. I think that everyone's going to read it a little differently, but I think everyone can and will be touched by this book. So those were my favorite books of the year. All 7 plus the 8th one. If I was good editor, I would like edit the spine of 5 feet apart up there, but I can't. But those are my favorite books of the year. You guys kind of got an idea of what my favorite books are, so if you have any recommendations, definitely leave them down below. I'd love to hear them. I read some other books, like I read other thrillers this year other than just Following. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in another one. Bye, Worlders. Wow, I'm winded. Oh, I didn't even finish the description.